I would like first of all to thank Dr. Finkelstein for this historical facts that he told us today. And it seems to me that he is really aware of his subject when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. However, when it comes to Egypt, he's totally unaware of the facts of events that happened there. And I would really, if I may permit myself to say, that he should really stick to his field of expertise and not to go to other areas that he is really not aware of. Actually, one may question himself if the theories that he previously heard concerning that there is a certain scheme right after the destruction of the Iraqi army and the Syrian that is totally mixed up in its own internal affairs, that the turn is for the Egyptian army to get dissolved. I don't know for the benefit of whom, but I could only think of one beneficiary of this. And I could say that once again that I'm compelled to refute the attitude of the coup. That doesn't mean that I am not accepting the fact that there was a certain military intervention in Egypt. I mean, I would be a liar if I would say something else. However, having said that, but the idea of always wanting to involve Egypt in many other areas that are outside of its own problems have to me, I mean, for me, represent 2 points of view, or one of 2 points of view. Either the wish of the destruction of the Egyptian army by always imposing a certain point of view that there is a coup in Egypt and this army shouldn't have intervened. Although it was accepted totally at the time of Mubarak, it's the same position, that the Egyptian army belongs to the Egyptians and it will never draw a bullet towards the Egyptian people. This is what happens at the time of Mubarak, but everybody was okay with it then, and this is what happened now with President Morsi, when they also refused to shoot the people. We had over 20 million people in the street, and this would actually support the second point of view, which says that the international community, especially those who wanted to call it a coup, wanted to see a bloodbath in Egypt between the people who wanted to ratify the trajectory of the revolution and the supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. We have around 20 million on one side, a few millions on the other side, and that would lead us to a bloodbath in a country that is consisting of 95 million persons. And at this point, the international community, and maybe you yourself, Mr. Finkelstein, would ask at this point, where is the army of Egypt? Why it's not stopping the bloodshed that is happening in the streets of Cairo? And I don't know if you would do that or would still ask the army not to intervene. Once again, I have to repeat that the army of Egypt is working based on our demands and our requests. We asked the army what to do, and they did the task according to the millions that went in the street. Maybe you saw one part of the story, but you didn't see the rest of it. The rest of it, the millions that were in the street, that you choose not to see them.
It happens that I did and do follow events in Egypt quite closely, and fortunately, they didn't take place a long time ago. They took place a short time ago. So it's a little too soon, I think, to start now to rewrite history. So let's just look strictly at the facts. Is there any evidence whatsoever that there were 30 million Egyptians in the street opposing the Brotherhood? Is there any evidence? Yes, that's what the supporters of the coup claimed, but then there were many people using satellite photographs who then examined experts in crowd sizes. They looked at the Google Maps, they looked at the size of Tahrir Square, they examined the other demonstrations, and the conclusions were reached that there were a maximum of 3 million people in the streets and probably closer to 1 million. The figures of 33 million, 20 million, this was all sheer, complete, total fantasy and fraud. It just didn't happen that way. Now, let's say you disagree with me. You claim there were 22 million, there were 30 million, 35 million. There was a very easy way to resolve this question. 6 months after the coup, there were supposed to be parliamentary elections. The parliamentary elections would have allowed, if the opposition won, it would have allowed to change the Constitution. It would have allowed to put serious limits on Mr. Morsi. Why didn't they wait for the parliamentary election? That's called democracy. That's called the rule of law. There was an easy available option to test which side had more support among the people. It's called the ballot box. It's called voting. Why didn't they wait? It was 6 months away, the parliamentary elections. Well, an explanation was just given. The explanation was the army wanted to prevent a bloodbath in the streets. Now that's kind of funny. You really have to laugh at that. Beginning July 8th, the army committed a succession of bloodbaths against the Muslim Brotherhood. The figure is, on July 8th they committed a bloodbath, they committed a second bloodbath at the end of July, and then they committed a series of bloodbaths in the middle of August. Probably 2,000 to 3,000, on August 14th, 2,000 to 3,000 unarmed Egyptian protesters were slaughtered in the streets in a bloodbath. So yes, unarmed, nonviolent, civil protesters were slaughtered in the streets in a succession of bloodbaths. So now what are we told? We couldn't wait for a democratic election because the army had to prevent a bloodbath. What happened was the army committed the bloodbath. And it should be out of respect to the dead that we not forget that. It was the most extraordinary display of murderous violence against peaceful protests actually in the modern world. There is no comparison. You can search your memories as I have. There is simply no comparable example of a mass bloodbath of that scale being committed against nonviolent civil disobedience, civil resistance.